My name is Rodney Young Jr. I'm 41 years old. I've been involved with Singles Pleasing the Lord for 20 years. Yeah, so when I got to college, I had a pretty radical transformation where I found some students on campus who were Christians, and I really wanted to give my life to the Lord. I had been in church all of my life, but it became a real thing in college, and I wanted to grow my relationship with the Lord. So I was in that place, but I was very broken, very broken. I mean, low self-esteem. I did not feel that great about myself. I felt very lonely. I wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't always feel like I had the right group of people to be around. I mean, I did find good people, but it was definitely lonely at times. And I struggled a lot with my identity. I struggled with really believing who God said I was. I was driving home one day and I heard this ad on the radio talking about loneliness, and it was saying stuff like, if you feel lonely around the holidays and no one is with you, you may need to check out this teaching on loneliness. Now, I'm a 21-year-old dude in college, so I wasn't trying to tell people that I felt lonely. So I just sneaked and ordered this this teaching because I did feel lonely. All right. I mean, even though I was saved and I was in college, I was trying to do the right thing. My friends were all they had relationships. And so I was like, I need something to fill this void because I was feeling it. I snuck out to a conference that Singles Pleasing the Lord was holding in the South Suburbs. And once again, I could not tell anyone because I was not trying to admit that I felt lonely or that I needed help. But I did want at least someone to go with me. So I was like, hey, I grabbed a close friend. I'm like, hey, can you go to this thing with me? So that's when I started engaging with the ministry. I was listening to the teachings before that. I was listening to Debbie's radio shows, and they were ministering to me. And I realized that loneliness was, although it was common, it was something that it was an invitation to be intimate with God, which was a new concept for me. Being intimate with Christ, first off, is a term that I was not familiar with. I'm like, intimacy, to be honest with you, that sounds kind of feminine. If you would have asked me that, I would have said, what are you talking about? But what I found was that being close to God and having a relationship where I actually heard his voice and I learned how to be led by the Spirit in my life, it produced a level of confidence, a level of power, honestly, in my life. I started seeing my finances come together. It produced a different quality of life, and I realized that was the life that God wanted me to have as a single man. And so I found out that if you develop closeness with God, you spend time with him, you learn how to do that. First off, I did not know how to do that. You learn how to pray in the Spirit. You learn how to meditate his word and let him speak to me about my purpose and about decisions I was making. I mean, this was just the everyday life stuff, but it was mind-blowing for me. It changed my life. Singles Pleasing the Lord helped me with my relationship with my wife. I met my wife in college. At the time, I was definitely not ready to get married, and I was not ready to be in any type of relationship. So Singles Pleasing the Lord began to prepare me by giving me a relationship with God where he could start to lead me on the principles of how to even recognize your mate. And it led me to do things like take a prayer class at my church, which is when I discovered my wife. She was in the same class. And so Singles Pleasing the Lord prepared me to be able to recognize when God was prompting me, when he was began to prompting me about who I was to marry and when. Timing was everything, because even in that class, when God spoke to me, I didn't think I was totally ready, to be honest. And there were some things that God was working on with me. But once again, the ministry of Singles Pleasing the Lord taught me how to check in with God, how to check my own motives to make sure that I'm not just making this up in my mind, or this is not just me just wanting to be with somebody, but is this really God's will? And that was the key. Early in the ministry, they had a Valentine's Day event. And I invited a lot of my friends to come to that. I'm like, okay, at that point I was out the closet. I said, y'all need to check out this ministry called Singles Pleasing the Lord. And no one came but her. And at the time we were not interested in each other. It was just purely platonic. But Nakia began to embraced the teachings. She embraced the teachings, and we, as a couple, would attend the Bible studies, and we were able to read Becoming Marriage material. In fact, while we were dating, we went through the entire series of Becoming Marriage material, and it made us ask each other questions during that time that were key, which is why we didn't rush down the altar. I mean, that literally going through that teaching really helped us to check areas of our life to make sure we really were ready. And it was like the best premarital counseling ever. One of the main things that is important to me and my wife, and one of the reasons why we are very much still connected with Singles Pleasing the Lord, is that they live fulfilled single lives before they're married. We want them to have what we had. We want them to have close, strong, intimate relationships with God before they get married. And we sow into the ministry, sowing for our kids as well, because one of the purposes of the ministry is to prepare people for marriage so that they can raise godly seed. So the ministry of Singles Pleasing the Lord to this day still greatly affects our household.